All right, aspiring authors. Today I have a really fascinating interview with Cealleigh Smart for you. And this is a little bit different than what I usually do on the podcast. As you know, I usually interview other authors to give you insights into what's working for them, what people who are in the trenches today are doing in order to sell their books, that sort of thing. Now, Cealleigh is a little different. She is not a published author. She is somebody who has undergone what is called narcissistic abuse. And the reason that I wanted to have this on the podcast is that I honestly believe that most people do not have enough insight into human behavior. And I don't mean authors, I mean people in general. Now, I have dealt with someone who is a narcissist in my life, a few people actually, and it's more prevalent than you would think. And understanding it is not only important when it comes to making sure that you are not being abused by a narcissist and that nobody else is, like any kind of abusive behavior, it's good to learn the signs of it so that you recognize it if it ever comes into your life. But I also think it's a really valuable conversation to have when it comes to our writing, because really we are crafting characters who need to be very human. And especially if you are, so there's really three major ways in which this might apply to your writing. If you're writing someone who is being abused by someone, narcissistic abuse is generally very verbal, and it certainly can be other things, but it's very manipulative. So if you're writing your main character as being a victim of something like that, this will really help you a lot. But I also think that most villains, by very definition, are very narcissistic. So learning the kinds of things they do, the kinds of behaviors they exhibit, whether you're writing a villain or maybe just an antagonist of some kind, can really be helpful in your writing. So Cealleigh and I are going to have a conversation about this. It was quite long. We talked for over an hour, and I know that a lot of you have told me lately that you prefer the shorter episodes, so I'm actually going to divide this into part 1 and part 2. So we'll have part 1 today and then part 2 next week, okay? And I really hope you get a lot out of this. Just think about how you could apply this to your stories, especially your villains, or if you're writing a character who is maybe a victim of abuse. I really think that this is going to be a really fascinating conversation for you. Okay? Let's hop in. Hi there. Do you want to write fiction that readers gush about, but you can't figure out how to fill in the beginning, middle, or end of your story? I can help with that. Do you struggle to flesh out character or plot, or to stick with your story long enough to finish it? I can help with that. Once your book is written, are you totally clueless about marketing? Do you find yourself Googling how to market a book or how to make money on fiction? I can help with that. Welcome to the Prolific Author Podcast. You know you're meant to write fiction, but you can't seem to nail down the skills or processes that make it simple and repeatable, not to mention fun. So you wait around for the muse to show up, try to force your story into a template or outline, or take months, if not years, to discover your story. Plot twist, there's a better way. Hi, I'm Cealleigh, USA Today bestselling author, story psychologist, writing craft geek, Christian, and story clarity coach. After 10 years of trying to master fiction using the old industry standard writing advice, I still felt lost. I finally learned what fictional storytelling and the human template are really about: humanity, emotional connection, and serving our readers by giving them relief through vicarious experience. Imagine learning how to flesh out your characters, plot, world, and theme with such definition and clarity that every story you ever write lands with readers and makes people go, wow, now there's an author. Imagine knowing how to drill down to the heart of your story, to learn what it's really about, and tell the unique story that only you can tell, so that you can get more readers, more downloads, more royalties, and of course, more fiction writing success. This is the podcast for you. We are prolific authors. All right, welcome back to the Prolific Author Podcast. I am here today with Cealleigh Smart, who is, usually I interview other authors and, industry experts who have something to, give to my listeners who are mostly fiction authors. But today, Cealleigh, we're kind of doing something a little different. I'm really, really excited about it. So how are you doing today, Cealleigh?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. I'm really excited to have you here because this is a little bit of a different topic that not only have I not talked about before on the podcast, but I don't hear other authors talking about it. So why don't you start by introducing yourself and telling us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, that sounds great. So my name is Kelly Smart. I am out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm a mom of two 11-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I've worked in nonprofits for over 20 years. I run my own nonprofit called Print the Love, where we travel around the world and give away photographs. And really that nonprofit that I founded came out of my experience with narcissistic abuse. And so yeah, we'll talk more about that for sure. But I'm also now remarried and to not a narcissist this time, thankfully. So I can speak to both those things. And yeah, so very full with family and traveling the world and kids. And probably my best friend who I spend the most time with in the pandemic is my rescue puppy, Maisie. So.
Oh, that sounds lovely. I love that it's Print the Love. That's such a sweet title for a company. So the reason that I wanted to have Kelly on today is because I have had some experience with narcissism in other people. And I feel like it's something that people are becoming more educated about. But overall, people, when you are trying to explain narcissistic behavior to someone who has never thought about it or dealt with it in a big way, they don't know what you're talking about. And it's really difficult to convey it to them. So it's something that I think people need to be more educated about. And then in terms of, authors who listen to my podcast, we're always having to create characters. And especially villains, we know, tend to be very narcissistic. So I think it was a good thing to educate people on so that they can use it as just a tool in their toolbox when they're creating characters. So let's talk about that. I mean, narcissism, anybody in the world can act in a narcissistic way. If I'm driving down the street and I want to be first, and kind of have a road rage thing going on, then I'm being narcissistic at that moment. But that doesn't mean that I'm a clinical narcissist. So can you kind of talk about what the difference is or how you define it?
Sure. So to be sure, I am definitely someone who is just coming from a lived experience and my own research. So I'm not an expert as a therapist or any way, but have lived through this. And I do truly feel like if you haven't lived through it, it's really hard to understand in any abusive situations. So narcissism, as I see it, is really a spectrum, right? Every human is narcissistic at some point, right? We are out for ourselves at some point, right? So it's this gradual line of, and on one far end is very altruistic in terms of being for 100% for other people, which is very rare. And the other side is very, very narcissistic and yeah, then you see more of the sociopath, right, on the other side, where there's absolutely no empathy on any level. Now, people on the narcissism kind of spectrum fall in all kinds of places, and that's what's really hard. And I think what was also helpful to me is there's actually a big difference between covert narcissism and non-covert narcissism. So covert narcissists are people that you would on the outside never ever see. You wouldn't see them cutting off people in traffic. You wouldn't see them acting in a grandiose kind of way, like I'm the best, the kind of charismatic person that you see maybe in movies or books. And so in my experience, I was married to a covert narcissism, which is someone who in the public eye or even out to our friends and family was always so gregarious and wonderful and the best. I almost describe as like a camp counselor personality, always so fun and always so kind and compassionate. And but at home it was a different person. And there's also kind of a saying in the narcissism support world about dog whistling. So I don't know if you've heard about this, and I feel like that explains a lot. So even in public, these people who know you very, very well, and obviously they're not abusing you all the time. Sometimes they're extremely wonderful. In the cycle of abuse, there's and maybe hopefully if an author is working on putting in a character who's experiencing abuse in any capacity, emotional or physical, that there is this cycle, right, that keeps you on the loop where they are love bombing you, and it's everything is wonderful and you're wonderful and you're like, this is the best relationship ever. This guy is great. There's nothing wrong, right? And then some incident happens and there's either an explosion of anger or, silent treatment, or, can look lots of different ways. And then you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening to me? And you start to rethink these things. And then they come back and love bomb you. And then you're like back and you're like, yeah, it's not so bad, but they're changing, so that kind of thing. But the dog whistle analogy that is being used is even in public circles, there are things that they know will just hurt you and no one else will notice. But in public situations, they will continue to manipulate, change, kind of pick at you in ways that are really, really mean or really, really hurtful, and nobody else knows. So then there's where that kind of like, you feel a little, it's where the kind of crazy making comes in, and they'll accuse you of being crazy for sure. And then you start to feel it yourself because you're like, no one else is noticing. Everyone else thinks this person's the best. They're so nice. They would never do anything, but they will continue to do these little things that only you know about, like a dog whistle that only you can hear, even in public settings. So it really is a really tricky subject, because there's so much to it, but it's almost hard to put into words sometimes, at least for me as a person who's lived through it. But once I knew the name of what was happening, and once I started to discover the patterns of it, and then I saw that other people experienced this as well, and then I can't even tell you how freeing this was to say, like, what is happening to me? I feel like nothing is making sense. Something else I kind of say is, it's like playing a chess game of life. And in my case, I have children. So it's really for like either the custody of your children or taking care of your children, or really it's for your life, right? Of your financial stability, your mental stability, your everything. And they're like, you have to play chess to be able to have these things, and you don't know how to play chess. But you're in like the championship of your life, and the rules keep changing. You can move this person, this, piece forward. Well, now you can't move it back. But last time I could move it forward. And it's like, that's why it feels like you're caught in a game that you don't know any of the rules, and then the rules keep changing. So I know that's really hard. Like, how do you write that? So hopefully this is helpful a little bit, but what else would be helpful?
No, it is. And I actually really like that analogy. And I kind of want to ask you too, I mean, when you have children involved, was any of it ever directed at them, or were you feeling like you were protecting them from it, or they were seeing you as a victim? I mean, what was that dynamic like?
So, when all of this kind of came to the surface, they were very little. So I think they were 2 and 5. And so, I mean, I believe that children are way, way smarter than we ever give them credit for. So I'm sure that they know, or did know, something was off with their parents. But as they've continued to grow up, and now they're preteen, teen, they have had their own experiences. And I really try as a parent not to put my experience onto them, to say, if they ever do want to talk about something, I definitely have tools and resources, and really help them to grow that boundary muscle. Does that make sense? Like
yes, yeah.
That's really what's going to protect you. So, because you said you have some experience, and really, if you can cut off someone 100%, that's the best. That's the absolute best for your healing, because they're not going to get better. I mean, this isn't something that they're going to improve from. They typically get worse and worse and worse over their lifetime. And so as as they grow up, I hope that they, they can get the choice if they want to continue that relationship or not. I unfortunately still have to continue to have the relationship because we share children together. And
Right.
the greatest thing that has helped me in moving forward in my healing is boundaries, and having
Right.
very strict boundaries, because these people, it's not just it, the part about that they're addicted to drama is true, right?
Right.
It's called narcissistic supply. They want your attention. They want to know that they're important to you. And if you're not going to give them positive feedback, then they'll take negative feedback. It's this
Right.
continual cycle of wanting to know you, be around you, see you. Hovering can be a big part of it. I've experienced it where they'll just stop by a lot, or he moved closer to us because he wanted for the children, of course,
Of course, yeah.
but it wasn't necessary in any way. So this kind of continually me, 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 me. And if you don't have good boundaries, then they'll eat away at that. And I can tell you there's so many ways in which he's tried to get around my boundaries. So in a state of healing, when you're really just trying to get your feet under you on some kind of like stable ground of like reality, like, you are a good person, you are strong, because there's a lot of this abusive, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not a good mother, you're not a good wife, why would anyone want to be with you, you don't know how to do this, which are all 100% lies. But when it was your best friend who previously said, you are wonderful, you're the best, you're my soulmate, you're the one for me for years and years, and then they kind of flip the script on you, you get like, wait a second, so maybe they are right. So when you kind of start to get yourself, and hopefully you surround yourself by people that can speak truth to you, like, that person is not right, you are fun, you are beautiful, you're enough, you're a great worker, you're a great mom, you're a good person. Now, nobody's perfect, right? So I'm not saying that,
Right.
but these, you are enough, and you don't need to continue to do those things. So once you start to get your legs under you, like your sea legs back on land, right? And then you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to put up some boundaries. Like, I'm not going to take any texts. That's otherwise I'd get 40 texts a day. I'm just being honest.
Right.
They could be good for a month, and then one day they would be awful and super, super abusive. So, but then something happens where my daughter has to go to urgent care. Well, can you just turn on your text, because I really need to tell you and get hold of you and be able to call you. So then I'll turn on the text, right? And they kind of gets through that little fence that I actually set up for myself to protect myself. And while that little door is open, then will come abuse. So I've just learned that there's all these little tricks, because he knows I really care about my children and I would do any thing for them. So I think even if you're writing about something, they always find the little workaround to get through you being strong and you protecting yourself and creating safe places. Like I said, my home is a safe place for me. And he'll stop by. Buddy brings the puppy. So then the kids are like, oh, can't Dad just come in with the puppy? I don't want him to come inside. That is my safe space. And then I look like the bad guy. Right. And so I'm giving very simple examples, but it can be very much more complicated than that. But yeah, just how to continue to come into my life. And if I don't have those really firm boundaries, they're never going to go away. So when we're kind of talking about my kids, hoping to give them the tools, the boundaries, so that they can have their own choices of saying, just because it's your parent, that you can choose to have a relationship with them or not. So I don't know if that's in if this resonates with any of your experience at all either.
Yeah, no, it does. So I think, I mean, I kind of made a couple of notes about what you were saying there, but for one thing, I think it's important to note is that they're very diabolical. You know, most of us who are normal and not narcissists, we're not thinking 4 steps ahead to try and trap someone and make them look bad. Right. But that's what narcissists do. Like, they really are sitting around thinking about that, you know? And so I think it's kind of like, we've actually seen this a lot lately in the world, you know, and with the whole geopolitical and a lot of things that are changing and coming out, and people like to say, well, people aren't that evil. They don't actually sit around doing that. It's like, no, you don't, because you're an awesome person, but there unfortunately are people in the world that do sit around doing this. So, I mean, I'm assuming that you've experienced that you can tell he's been sitting around thinking about ways to do this. I mean, it's just what you said, thinking about ways to get around your boundaries, because he knows your weaknesses and he knows you.
Right. Yeah. So kind of what I've discovered, and again, this is just from my lived experience. I'm sure you could have a trauma coach on here or a narcissist expert. But yeah, as somebody who has lived through it, I don't know how much he sits around thinking about it. I think, at least in my case, there are definitely some forethought, but it is much more reactive.
Okay.
And what I've come to conclude that it is very much shame-based in terms of when that person feels shame, that the blame 100% goes to everyone else except them. Right? When I am looking out for my kids or myself, or honestly, I'm not even thinking about him. I'm just making a decision about my own finances or my own autonomy as a woman. He thinks it's about him. He thinks that whatever decision I've made is about him, and that he feels bad. I mean, I think there are narcissists out there definitely that have absolutely no empathy whatsoever. They're just not capable of it. They kind of have an empty shell. But I do like the spectrum, and maybe I'm still kind of in this, like, I do feel like there's a part of him, because you've seen the best in someone. Right. And I can't believe that was nothing.
Right.
So I have seen really, really, really goodness come out of this person. And either that was 100% someone acting, which I can't see it, or there is some good there, and that he does deep, deep down feel bad about what he's done or what he's said, and knows it's really crappy and really terrible. Now, whether he's consciously acknowledged that or not, but anything that's shame that comes up, like he didn't do something good as a dad, or he didn't, anything that I could maybe point out as a small flaw is 100% my fault. And he has to tell me first how bad I am before it ever comes to him. So it is kind of this reaction, which then leads people to walk around on eggshells. And that's something I've talked to my kids about as well, is, you know, I'll have to wait, you know, months until I ask a specific question or I have a specific request in terms of, like, can we go on a vacation? Can't just ask that anytime. You have to be very strategic about when things are calm and peaceful and he wants to be helpful, right? And so you're walking around eggshells because you don't want to disturb the bear. And that's I guess more of the abuse that I occurred. It is more reactive. But I'm sure there's some things that he knew about months ago, and he's planning how he's going to prepare for it when it comes out, because everything always comes out.
Right.
So that diabolical part of it, because I've been a part of a number of support groups, listened to a lot of podcasts, people, been to a lot of therapists, and in terms of narcissistic abuse, and there is very key patterns that these people follow, and one of the things that they say is that it's really, they try to mirror the person that they want to be like. So I don't know if you've heard this kind of mirroring part, at least in relation in maybe it is child adult relationships. I don't know. I can't speak to that as much as a romantic relationship, but be really mirroring that person. So that's why you kind of fall in love with almost yourself, because they really try to be like you. And that's also why you see so many amazing, wonderful men and women on both sides get sucked into this, because narcissists look for the best, the strongest, the most creative. These are like the best.
Right.
Like, how did they get into a relationship like this? It just like blows your mind. And you're like, they're so independent and aware. They're not just, and it's because those people seek them out because they want to be like that. And not, you could some probably say it's like a parasite, right? But it's also like a mirroring of, they will like me if I'm like them. So they kind of like all the things you like, and they act the way you act. And if you're comfortable with yourself and you like yourself, I think for me, I was kind of living in this world because I was married for 10 years before this kind of blew up with an affair. So that's kind of where I started to look much more deeply into it. But prior to that, I was like, this is great. This is wonderful. This is, seems to be good, because I think he was mirroring me in so many different ways of how to approach life. But I did ask him after kind of we had decided to separate, in a moment of clarity, I'm going to have some real trust issues. Like, what the heck happened to you? Right. All these moments of clarity. Now, again, maybe I'm still in this kind of, I trust people. There's some goodness in all people, which I used to be more like that, but now less and less. And he said, I was trying to be someone else. And I said, for 10 years. And he's like, yeah, someone else that's not me.
Interesting.
And so it's like, can somebody really fake it for that long? Is that possible? Were there red flags? Hindsight's 2020, of course, right? Yeah, there were for sure. But I think this mirroring part, and kind of what you talked about diabolical stuff, it is a worldview difference. That's what I've also come to conclude, that they just have a completely different worldview than people like yourself and I, that people are generally good, right? They come more from a worldview of that everyone is out to get me. And that does come from usually trauma at a young age of their own parents or their own experiences. And it was a coping mechanism to just put up this shell of themselves. And so, yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that too, but I saw that myself. To be honest, there was an affair. That's a whole other story. That's very interesting and fascinating. He told me from day one, and I kind of watched the train wreck happen versus find out later. So interesting.
Right.
It's because he told me every last detail, which is traumatic in its own right. But so why would someone tell you all the details other than to just hurt you? Right.
Right.
But I did meet with a counselor after the affair had been going on for quite a while, tried to get rid of her, tried to end the relationship. Anyways. And she said, I want you to read this book. It's kind of like Intro to Verbal Abuse Relationship, kind of the standard. It was from like, I think the 80s or 90s. And like I'm just not, this isn't me. 2 chapters in, I said, this is me. And this is me before the affair. Because the affair had kind of brought out this whole other side of this narcissism and this kind of emotional abuse. Like, she's better, she's this, she's that. This is your fault. The affair is your fault. And that book really goes into, I can get the name of it for your listeners if you'd like.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like that would be a really good book and it's a short book, to really kind of see the difference in worldview and how you can possibly be in a relationship like this and not even really know it. Because my worldview was, I would always approach him. I thought it was always me, like in terms of, well, I just asked him right after dinner, so that's why he was upset. That was kind of my fault. I should have waited. He had a busy day, right? Like everything, without even thinking about it, was, I would walk on these eggshells.
Right.
I thought I was doing it because I had the worldview that generally the world is full of very good people that are always wanting to do good and do their best. Whereas he was coming at the world as everyone's against him, and even coming to the conclusion that I was against him. And then he kind of turned into this monster that that good side of him, I feel like, would be so disappointed in, and still is, right? And still recovering from this shame.
Right.
But again, this is one person's stories. I just,
no, I think there's a lot of value in what you're saying. And actually, I was glad that you talked about that, because I was going to ask next about the difference between verbal abuse and narcissistic abuse. And is there a difference? Are they both part of a bigger umbrella, or?
Yeah, so I think, gosh, that would be a good question to deep dive into. I think narcissistic abuse is under the bigger umbrella of verbal abuse. It is a very specific, it is this very manipulative twisting of the truth, of the gaslighting, that the verbal abuse can, as horrible it is, can be just much more straightforward. You are this, you did this, and it's, whereas the narcissism takes it to a weird, twisted level that makes you question everything. Not to say that if you told me you're a terrible mom, and then that was the only statement, and he yelled at me about that and told me to get the F out, and that would be traumatic too, right? You're a B and you're this and that, stuff like that. That would be verbal abuse and terrible. But when it turns narcissistic, when this person twists your reality, the whole idea that he still believes that the divorce is my fault,
right?
And is seriously convinced of that, because he started the affair in about 18 months of finally deciding he's, my husband has a girlfriend. Cealleigh, you got to decide, what are you going to do here? Then yes, I'm the ultimate one that said, okay, I have to let go for myself, because how, you've been so mean to me. How can I even let myself be that way? I would never let my best friend, my kid, anyone go through something like that, yet I continue to let myself. So it's this twisting of the truth, and that's why it's kind of hard for me to name, but it is different.
Okay.
So
it's like the I think it's just the mind games element, right? That just kind of makes you feel like you're crazy, like you were saying before, and it's hard to nail down, because I think and this is something that I experienced. I have someone in my life who is, and I would talk to other people about it, and it almost makes it seem like the person going through it is just complaining, because there's not anything super direct. Like you said, it's not direct verbal abuse. It's not direct physical abuse. It's something they do, and it just makes it sound like you're kind of complaining about a situation that's in and of itself relatively small, but it's when they're doing that over and over and over again and making you feel like you're nuts, and it's hard to explain that to somebody, because it's not a concrete thing that they're doing. It's all just I don't know, psychological, I guess.
Okay, that's where we're going to end for today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and that you'll join me next time for the second part of it, which we're going to dive into more of the same stuff and talk about a few different aspects of things. And yeah, I hope that this is something that you can apply to your writing and you can see how it can really affect the way that you write your characters, especially the villains. All right. So I'm just going to let you chew on that for the rest of the week, and we'll be back with the B part of the conversation next time. All right. Everyone have a great week of writing.
Before you go, if you found value in this episode, can you do me a solid and share it with other authors you think might benefit from it? Remember, the rising tide lifts all boats. Also, if you haven't yet, would you be willing to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts? It's the only way for me to know that you're enjoying the podcast, and it helps Apple recommend it to other authors like you who might benefit from it. Finally, if you haven't already, hop over and join the Prolific Author community on Facebook. Inside, authors network, ask questions, and I often do teaching via Facebook Lives. Thank you so much for listening today. Happy story crafting this week, and remember, there is always a market for awesome.